know that weird moment when your paycheck hits your bank account? For about 5 minutes, you feel okay again. You open the app. You see the number sitting there. Maybe you even do the little mental math in your head. All right. This month might finally be different. Then life starts taking its cut. Rent, car payment, subscriptions you forgot existed. A couple food deliveries because you were tired. One quick Target run that somehow became 180, and suddenly your paycheck looks like it got mugged in a dark alley. Now here's the part that gets interesting. Most people think financial stress comes from giant mistakes. The expensive car, the terrible investment, the maxed out credit cards. But honestly, that's usually not what keeps you stuck. The real damage comes from a habit so normal you barely even notice it anymore. Tiny reward purchases, little emotional spending hits, the $500 habit that quietly drains your future without ever feeling dangerous in the moment. And no, I'm not talking about never enjoying your life. That's not realistic. This isn't one of those stop buying coffee and become a millionaire lectures. You'd unsubscribe in about 6 seconds, and honestly, I wouldn't blame you. But stick with me here, because once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it anymore. And this is the part nobody talks about. Most spending isn't logical, it's emotional. You buy things because you're stressed, because you're bored, because work was exhausting, because your brain wants relief right now. That Amazon package? That food delivery? That random late-night online shopping session? A lot of the time, you're not actually buying the product. You're buying a temporary feeling. And the scary part? Those tiny emotional purchases rarely feel expensive individually. That's why they're dangerous. Nobody panics over spending 27 or $42 or one quick treat yourself purchase after a long day. But wealthy people understand something most stressed consumers never fully realize. Small repeated behaviors become your financial identity. And once a habit becomes identity level, it starts running automatically. Here's a simple example. Let's say you spend an extra $16 a day on convenience spending. Food delivery, impulsive snacks, random online purchases, upgrades you didn't really need. $16 doesn't sound life-changing, but over 1 year, that's nearly $6,000. Over 10 years, around $60,000, and that's before investing growth. Now imagine that money invested instead at an average market return. Suddenly that small habit quietly turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. That's the difference between freedom and constant financial pressure. But here's where it gets even deeper. The habit isn't really about money. It's about emotional regulation. That's why smart financial advice often fails. Because spreadsheets don't beat stress. Logic doesn't magically overpower emotion. You already know you shouldn't overspend. That's not the issue. The issue is that spending temporarily feels like control. You feel anxious. You buy something. You feel behind in life. You upgrade something. You feel emotionally drained. You reward yourself. Your brain starts connecting spending with relief. And once that loop forms, it becomes automatic. That's why some people earn $40,000 and slowly build wealth, while others earn $140,000 and still feel broke every month. Income matters, but behavior matters more than most people want to admit. You've probably seen this happen in real life. There's always that person making good money who somehow never gets ahead. Every raise disappears. Every bonus vanishes. Every extra dollar instantly turns into a new monthly expense. Bigger apartment, nicer car, more expensive restaurants, more subscriptions, more convenient spending. And here's the thing. None of those purchases feel insane on their own. That's why lifestyle inflation is so sneaky. It arrives quietly, one tiny upgrade at a time. You start telling yourself things like, I work hard. I deserve this. It's only another $80 a month. Everyone else spends way more. And maybe they do. But here's where it gets interesting. Wealth isn't usually destroyed by one catastrophic decision. It's slowly leaked away through recurring comfort purchases that become permanent. That's the trap. Because temporary luxuries have a nasty habit of becoming permanent expectations. The food delivery that started as an occasional treat becomes normal. The upgraded phone becomes mandatory. The expensive gym membership becomes part of your identity even though you barely go anymore. And suddenly your entire financial life requires a massive income just to maintain baseline comfort. That's exhausting. And honestly, it traps a lot of people for decades. Now compare that to someone quietly building wealth. Their life often looks surprisingly normal. Same phone for years, reliable car, simple routines, controlled monthly expenses. Not because they're miserable, because they understand flexibility creates freedom. Every recurring expense steals future options from you. That's the part most people miss. When your lifestyle becomes too expensive, your job stops feeling optional. You can't take risks anymore. You can't walk away from toxic work environments. You can't breathe financially. Your bills own you. And the crazy part? A lot of people with six-figure incomes secretly live exactly like that. Completely trapped. Now let me show you some math that completely changed how I think about spending. Imagine two people. Both earn the exact same salary. Both get the same raises. Both are equally intelligent. But person A spends an extra $500 every month on lifestyle upgrades and emotional spending. Person B invests that same $500 every month instead, at an average long-term market return of around 8%. After 25 years, person B ends up with roughly $475,000, almost $500,000, from one behavioral difference. That's it. Not genius investing, not crypto luck, not winning the lottery, just one person consistently choosing delayed freedom over immediate comfort. Now obviously life is more complicated than that. Nobody invests perfectly. Nobody avoids every unnecessary purchase. That's not the goal. The goal is awareness. Because once you recognize emotional spending patterns, you stop operating on autopilot. And this is the part nobody warns you about. Emotional spending becomes strongest when you're tired. Decision fatigue is real. After a stressful day, your brain wants convenience immediately. That's why late-night spending is so dangerous. You stop thinking long-term. Your future self disappears. Only present comfort matters. That's when the buy now button starts looking spiritual. And companies know this, by the way. Entire industries are built around emotionally, exhausting you into convenience spending. One-click checkout, food delivery apps, flash sales, limited time offers. Everything is designed to remove friction between emotion and spending. Because the less time you pause, the more money you spend emotionally instead of intentionally. Wealthy people aren't magically immune to this. They just build systems that slow the process down. That's important, because discipline alone eventually fails. Systems matter more. For example, wealthy savers often automate investing. First, so money disappears, before they can emotionally spend it. They delay large purchases 24 hours, sometimes 72 hours. They unsubscribe from marketing emails. They avoid recreational shopping completely. And honestly, that last one changes everything. Because bored shopping has become a national pastime. People go online for entertainment now. Not because they need something. Because scrolling gives the brain little dopamine hits. But every tiny purchase carries hidden weight. Not just financially, mentally. Every unnecessary recurring expense adds pressure. More bills, more obligations, more stress. And eventually your entire financial life starts feeling heavier than it should. Here's something nobody tells you when you're younger. Financial freedom doesn't usually feel exciting at first. It feels quiet, almost boring. Because real wealth is often just the absence of constant money stress. That's it. No panic every time your car makes a weird sound. No checking your account before buying groceries. No feeling your stomach drop when an unexpected bill shows up. And that stability? It's built through small, repeated decisions most people ignore. Not flashy moments. That's why wealthy people often look surprisingly average from the outside. Meanwhile, the financially stressed person usually looks richer. Better car, newer gadgets, constant upgrades. But behind the scenes, completely different reality. One person is buying appearance. The other is buying breathing room. And breathing room changes your entire life. You negotiate differently at work. You sleep differently. You make decisions from confidence instead of panic. That's the real power of controlling emotional spending. Not becoming cheap, becoming harder to control. Because when your lifestyle requires less money to maintain, fear loses power over you. A toxic boss becomes less terrifying. A layoff becomes survivable. An emergency becomes manageable instead of catastrophic. That's real wealth. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. A lot of emotional spending comes from comparison. Not need. Comparison. You see someone online traveling constantly. You feel behind. You see someone upgrading apartments. You suddenly hate your place. You see somebody driving a luxury SUV. Now your perfectly reliable car feels embarrassing. Social media turned lifestyle comparison into a 24-hour experience. And your brain was never designed for that. You're comparing your normal life to thousands of carefully edited highlight reels every single day. Of course, that creates emotional spending pressure. That's the business model. Make you feel inadequate, then sell you the solution. And this is the part most people miss. Lifestyle envy is infinite. There is no finish line. There will always be someone with a nicer house, more money, better vacations, fancier clothes. If your financial goals are built around impressing strangers, you will literally never feel satisfied, ever. That's Why wealthy people eventually stop chasing status. Because they realize status spending is a treadmill. You run faster and faster without actually arriving anywhere emotionally. Meanwhile, investing works the opposite way. At first it feels painfully slow. Then eventually the momentum becomes incredible. That's the magic most people quit before reaching. The early years feel almost invisible. You save your first $1,000. Nothing changes. Then maybe 10,000. Still doesn't feel life-changing. But eventually the money starts generating more money on its own. And psychologically that changes everything. Because now your financial life stops depending entirely on your labor. Your money begins working too. That's the shift wealthy people obsess over. Not looking rich, owning assets. There's a huge difference. A financed luxury lifestyle can disappear overnight. Assets keep producing. That's why wealthy people care so much about cash flow and investments. Every dollar spent emotionally is a dollar that can no longer compound for your future. And compound growth is ridiculous. Once time enters the equation, seriously, a single invested dollar doesn't just grow once. It grows, then the growth grows, then the growth of the growth grows. That's why small habits matter so much more than people think. Tiny repeated behaviors create massive long-term outcomes, both financially and emotionally. So if you want to completely change your money situation, don't start by asking, how do I get rich fast? That question usually leads people into scams, gambling behavior, or terrible decisions. Instead ask, how do I reduce unnecessary financial pressure permanently? That's the better question. Because sustainable wealth is usually built quietly, one controlled decision at a time. And honestly, that's why the $500 habit is so dangerous. Not because $500 automatically ruins your life. Because repeated emotional spending slowly trains your brain to prioritize immediate relief over long-term freedom. That's the real battle. Not math, identity. You become the kind of person who either controls money or constantly reacts emotionally to it. And here's the crazy part. Most financial breakthroughs happen internally before they happen externally. Before your bank account changes, your behavior changes. Before your investments explode, your spending habits calm down. Before you feel wealthy, you stop needing constant proof that you are. That's the shift. And once it happens, your entire relationship with money starts feeling lighter. You stop chasing every upgrade. You stop trying to impress people you barely even like. You stop using spending as emotional therapy. Instead, you start protecting peace. That's what wealthy people are really doing differently. They protect peace more aggressively than appearances. And protecting peace often looks boring from the outside. Cooking at home more often, driving a car longer, ignoring trends, avoiding impulse upgrades, saying no to purchases that don't genuinely improve life long term. Not because they're deprived, because they understand every dollar has a future version attached to it. That $200 impulse purchase? It's not really $200. Invested over time, it could become thousands later. That's opportunity cost. And this is where it gets interesting. Once you start seeing spending this way, your brain changes automatically. You begin asking different questions. Not, can I afford this today? But, what is this costing my future freedom? Completely different mindset. Because technically, a lot of financially stressed people can afford their purchases today. That's not the problem. The problem is tomorrow, next year, 10 years from now. That's where emotional spending quietly steals options. Now obviously, you still enjoy life. You still travel sometimes. You still buy things you genuinely love. This isn't about becoming robotic. It's about becoming intentional. There's a huge difference. Intentional spending feels satisfying longer. Emotional spending usually fades fast. That's why impulse purchases often create guilt afterward. Your brain realizes the emotional relief was temporary, but the financial consequence stayed. Wealthy people learn to pause before purchases because that pause interrupts emotional autopilot. Even something simple like waiting 24 hours changes behavior dramatically. The urgency fades, the emotion cools down, and suddenly half the things you wanted don't even feel important anymore. That one habit alone can save thousands every year. Now imagine doing that consistently for 10 or 20 years. That's how ordinary incomes quietly turn into real wealth. Not through perfection, through reduced financial leakage. And honestly, that should feel encouraging, because it means your financial future probably doesn't depend on becoming a genius investor. It depends more on mastering everyday behavior. That's achievable. You don't need to predict stock markets. You don't need a six-figure salary overnight. You don't need some secret side hustle from a guy renting Lamborghinis on Instagram. You need awareness, patience, and systems that protect you from emotional decision-making. That's the game. And once you realize that, money starts feeling less chaotic. Because now you understand something most people never fully grasp. Wealth is rarely built through giant dramatic moments. It's usually built through small quiet decisions repeated consistently for years. That's how freedom grows, slowly, quietly, then all at once.